The conference room fell silent as Marcus threw the folder onto the table, spreadsheets spilling across the polished surface. "Care to explain these discrepancies in your department's accounts, Jennifer?" he demanded. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart raced. "Which discrepancies exactly?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped, jabbing his finger at the numbers. $10 million missing over the past year. I'll trace back to accounts you oversee. I touched the slim silver pen in my blazer pocket, the one that had been recording every meeting with Marcus for the past 12 months. "That's interesting," I said carefully, "because I have different numbers right here. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I spent the last year watching my boss orchestrate the biggest fraud in company history while methodically setting me up to take the fall." Marcus Thompson, CFO of Batrayal Technologies, had seemed like a mentor when I first started. He promoted me to head of financial operations within 2 years, praising my attention to detail and integrity. Now, I understood why he'd been grooming me as his perfect scapegoat. "The police are on their way," he said, his practiced concern almost convincing. "If you cooperate now, maybe we can work something out." I pulled out my laptop, keeping my movements deliberate. "Before they arrive, maybe we should review the real numbers, the ones from your private meetings with James Chen." His smile faltered slightly. James Chen was our biggest client and Marcus's partner in embezzlement, though no one was supposed to know that. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but I caught the slight tremor in his voice. "No," I turned my laptop around, showing a spreadsheet I compiled over months of investigation. "These transfers to offshore accounts might refresh your memory. Or should we listen to your conversation with James from last week?" The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing." I pressed play on the recording, and his own voice filled the room. "The auditors won't find anything." I set it up perfectly. "Everything points to Jennifer. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll be long gone with the money." Marcus lunged for my laptop, but I was faster, stepping back as the conference room doors opened. 2 police officers entered, followed by our CEO, Patricia Barrett. "Perfect timing," I said, turning to them. "I believe I have something you'll want to hear. The story of how I caught one of Seattle's most respected foes stealing millions wasn't simple. It had started with small inconsistencies, numbers that didn't quite add up. Most people would have ignored them, but I'd been raised by a forensic accountant who taught me to trust my instincts. A year ago, I noticed the first red flag. The recording played through the conference room speakers. Each word damning the beauty of it was Jennifer's too honest for her own good. Marcus's voice echoed, "She'll be so busy trying to prove her innocence that she won't see what's really happening until it's too late." Marcus slumped in his chair as the evidence mounted. I pulled up document after document, recording after recording, building the case I'd spent a year constructing. It started with the Chen Industries account, I explained to the officers and Patricia. Marcus restructured our billing system last year, allegedly to improve efficiency, but what he actually did was create a shadow accounting system. I showed them the parallel books I'd discovered, one for official records, another hidden and encrypted on Marcus's private server. It had taken months of careful investigation and some help from IT to crack his security. Every major payment from Chen Industries was split. 90% went to the official accounts, 10% was diverted through a series of shell companies before ending up here. I pointed to an account in the Cayman Islands. "That's a lie," Marcus interrupted, but his voice lacked conviction. "She's clearly doctored these recordings." Patricia, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "The board received an anonymous tip last month about irregularities in our accounts. We hired an independent auditor." She slid a report across the table. Their findings matched Jennifer's exactly. I hadn't known about the audit. I'd been so focused on gathering my own evidence, working late nights, double-checking every detail. The confirmation that others had reached the same conclusions was vindicating. The police officers exchanged glances. "Mr. Thompson, you'll need to come with us," they said as they led Marcus out. He turned to me, his face twisted with rage. "You have no idea what you've done. James Chen won't let this go public. You just signed your own career's death warrant." I held up my pen. That sounds like a threat, Marcus. Mind if I add it to my collection of recordings? After the police left with Marcus, Patricia asked me to stay behind. The conference room felt larger somehow, emptier without the weight of secrets hanging in the air. How long have you known? She asked. I suspected something was wrong about a year ago, I replied. Remember that audit Marcus pushed back against? The one he said would waste company resources? She nodded. That was my first real clue. Then I noticed patterns in the Chen Industries accounts, small discrepancies at first, but they added up. Marcus wasn't just stealing from us. He was helping James Chen embezzle from his own company. Patricia rubbed her temples. Chen Industries is our big client. This could destroy both companies if it goes public. Not necessarily, I said, pulling out one last file. I have a proposal for how we can handle this quietly while still doing the right thing. She raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The next few hours were a blur of meetings with legal teams, emergency board calls, and careful strategy sessions. By nightfall, we had a plan in place. What we didn't know was that Marcus had one last move to make, one that would force me to decide just how far I was willing to go to protect the truth. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Clever girl, but did you really think Marcus was working alone? Come alone to the pier tomorrow at midnight if you want to keep your evidence intact. I smiled, already reaching for my recording pen. Some people never learn. The game wasn't over yet. In fact, it was about to get much more interesting. The pier was deserted at midnight except for a solitary figure standing near the edge. As I approached, I recognized James Chen's silhouette. Miss Walsh, he said smoothly. I was hoping we could discuss your evidence. Of course, I replied, my recording pen already active in my pocket. Let's talk about the $100 million you and Marcus stole from your own company. He stiffened. 10 million. That's what Marcus thought too. He never realized you were playing him the same way he played me. I pulled out my laptop, showing him the real numbers I had uncovered. James Chen hadn't just been helping Marcus steal from Barra Technologies. He'd been using Marcus's scheme to cover his own much larger fraud. Impressive, he admitted. But what's your endgame here? Release this, and both companies collapse. Thousands lose their jobs, unless we do things my way. I countered, laying out the proposal I prepared with Patricia. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Both companies would undergo restructuring, the stolen money would be quietly returned through legal channels, Marcus would take the public fall, and James would step down citing health reasons. Both companies would survive, jobs would be saved, and most importantly, it would never happen again. And what do you get out of this? James asked suspiciously. Oversight, I said firmly. I'll head a new compliance division spanning both companies, with full autonomy and direct board access. He laughed. You thought of everything. Not everything, I admitted. Just learned from the best. You and Marcus taught me how the game is played. I'm just changing the rules. The next morning, the plan was set in motion. Marcus, facing overwhelming evidence, took a plea deal. James announced his retirement, and I stepped into my new role, armed with recordings, documents, and the hard-earned knowledge that sometimes the best way to fight corruption is to understand it completely. 1 year later, I sat in my new office, reviewing quarterly compliance reports. Both companies had not only survived but thrived under transparent leadership. My recording pen sat in a frame on my wall, a reminder that the truth always comes out, as long as someone is willing to listen carefully and wait for the right moment. Marcus wrote to me from prison, "You outplayed us all." I should have seen it coming. I never replied. Some lessons are better learned in silence. James Chen kept his end of the deal, becoming an unlikely ally in corporate reform. You could have destroyed everything, he told me recently. And instead, you found a way to fix it. That was always the goal, I responded. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. The pier, where we'd had our midnight meeting, became my thinking spot. I go there sometimes, remembering how close everything had come to collapse and how sometimes the biggest victories come from offering people a way to save themselves. The recordings that started it all were sealed in a vault, insurance against anyone who might consider trying something similar. But I kept one clip, the moment Marcus realized he'd been caught. Not for revenge, but as a reminder, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard.